What would you do if your life was a lie? It was a sunny morning when Mark and I decided, almost as a joke, to take a DNA test. He was sitting at the kitchen table, drinking his latte while leafing through a history magazine. I, with my mind full of ideas about famous ancestors, approached him and said, "What if we did that DNA test? We could find out if we have any famous ancestors. Who knows, maybe I'm a descendant of someone important." Mark laughed and looked at me over the top of the magazine. "Well, I always knew you had an adventurous spirit, but that's a bit exaggerated, isn't it?" "Exaggerated? Look, it could be fun. What if we have a connection to Roman emperors or an Egyptian pharaoh?" He shook his head, still laughing, and replied, "If you think this is a good idea, then I'm in. But don't expect me to dress like a pharaoh." That light conversation turned into an impulsive decision. I ordered the DNA test kits, and within a few days, they arrived. Expectation was in the air. I felt like a child waiting for Christmas Day. What would we discover? Finally, after weeks of waiting, the results arrived in a simple, manila envelope that carried immense weight. I was in the living room, my heart racing, when Mark walked in, holding the envelope. "Here it is," he said, with an expression that mixed curiosity and apprehension. I sat on the couch, and he joined me. The silence was palpable. With shaking hands, I opened the envelope and pulled out the paper containing the results. "Come on, what do you have?" Mark asked, looking at me with a nervous smile. I looked at the data, and with each word I read, my heart sank a little deeper. The first sentence said that I shared no genetic link with Mary and Roger, my parents. The words jumbled together in my mind, and I could barely understand what was happening. "No, it can't be," I whispered, almost not believing what I was seeing. Mark leaned in closer, his eyes widening. "What's going on, Jenna? What does it say?" "It says that I'm not their biological daughter." My voice failed me, and tears began to form in my eyes. "I'm not Mary and Roger's daughter." Mark's expression turned from curiosity to shock. "Like this? There must be some error. Are you sure you read that right?" I don't know." I was in a panic, trying to process the avalanche of emotions that hit me. "What does that mean? How can it be?" He took the paper from my hand and read it quickly, his expression changing as the words jumped out at him. "That doesn't make sense, Jenna. You have to talk to your parents." "Talk to them?" The idea of confronting Mary and Roger terrified me. "What am I going to say?" "Hi, Mom. I'm taking a DNA test and I found out that I'm not your daughter." Mark took a deep breath, trying to calm me down. "Look, you need to know the truth. No matter what you discover, you are still the same person. We will get through this together." I felt a mixture of gratitude and despair. The idea of having a completely new identity was terrifying, but knowing Mark was by my side gave me some comfort. I don't know where to start. I felt lost, as if a part of me had been ripped away. "How about starting with your mother?" Mark suggested, with an encouraging tone. "You can ask her about it." I agreed, but the thought of confronting my mother made me distressed. Hours passed, and the idea of having that conversation consumed me. When night came, I finally decided I needed to know. "I'll do it," I told Mark, who was watching TV. "Are you sure? I can't live with this doubt. I need to understand." He nodded, although his concern was evident in his gaze. Later, when silence took over the house, I called my mother. The call seemed endless, but I finally heard his familiar voice. "Hey, my dear. How are you?" "Hi, Mom. I need to talk to you about something important." The change in tone of my voice immediately caught his attention. "Of course, what happened?" "I took a DNA test." "A DNA test?" The confusion was clear in his voice. "For what?" "To find out more about our origins." And the results came, and my heart was racing, and I knew I had to be direct. "Mom, I'm not your biological daughter." A deep silence took over the line. Time seemed to stop as I waited for his reaction. "What are you saying, Jenna?" The shock was palpable. "The results say I share no genetic link with you and Dad." "That is true?" "That can't be," she replied quickly, but her hesitation was unmistakable. "I need to know, Mom. You have to tell me the truth." She sighed, and I could hear her heavy breathing on the other end. I don't know what to say. Tell me the truth, please." Finally, she spoke. But the words didn't sound like relief. There is no possibility of adoption or error, Jenna. Her look, even from a distance, seemed to be a mix of pain and despair. You are our daughter. It always was. But the way she said it, the hesitation in her voice, made me feel like there was something more. So what does that mean? I asked, my voice choked with emotion. It means you are our daughter, and that will never change, no matter what the test results say. What should have been a comfort felt more like a lie, and, at that moment, I realized that the search for truth had just begun. Desperate and confused, I sat in front of my computer, trying to organize the thoughts that felt like a whirlwind inside me. The DNA test result was still fresh in my mind, like an open wound that wouldn't stop bleeding. I'm not my parents' biological daughter, I repeated to myself, as if those words could make any sense. What I really wanted was to understand why all this happened. What had happened? How could my life change in an instant? I decided I needed answers. I got up and went to the bookshelf, where I kept some old boxes of documents. I started going through them, hoping to find something that could help me understand the situation better. Among old bills and faded photos, I found a record book from Maplewood General Hospital. It was a place I had always heard about, but never paid much attention to. Maybe this is it, I thought. A light of hope lit up inside me. If I could find information about what happened there, maybe I could discover something about my origins. With the book in hand, I decided to go to the hospital myself. Anxiety took over me, but the determination to discover the truth was stronger. As soon as I arrived at Maplewood, the atmosphere was familiar but strange at the same time. The reception was decorated with flowers, and the smell of hand sanitizer was pungent. A smiling employee approached me. "Hi, welcome to Maplewood. How can I help?" he asked, with a friendly smile. "Hi, I would like to access some old records, if possible." My voice was shaking, but I forced myself to maintain my composure. "Old records? This can be complicated. Do you have any documentation that proves your interest?" He raised an eyebrow, looking suspicious. I felt my heart race. I had nothing I could prove. I looked around, trying to find a way to convince him. Then an idea popped into my mind. "My name is Jenna. I took a DNA test and found out that I'm not my parents' biological daughter. I'm trying to understand what happened," I said, sincerity in my voice. The official hesitated. For a moment, I thought he was going to push me away, but then he seemed to soften. "I'm sorry about that, Jenna. The truth is that many records are confidential, but I can direct you to the archives department. They can help." I thanked him and followed the indicated path. With each step, I felt a mix of hope and fear. What did I really want to find out? What if the answers were worse than I feared? The file room was a small, stuffy space filled with stacked folders and boxes. A woman with glasses, who looked to be in her 50s, was organizing some documents. "Can I help?" she asked, without looking away from the papers. "I'm Jenna. I'm looking for information about hospital birth records, especially from a few years ago." My voice hesitated, but the woman seemed receptive. "What year do you have in mind?" She looked at me interested. "I would like to know about something that happened in 1985. I replied, while my heart was beating fast. She made some notes before looking at me again. "Unfortunately, many birth records are destroyed after a certain time, but I can check what is available. Can you give me more details?" I don't know much, except that my DNA test revealed that I'm not my parents' biological daughter, and I thought maybe something had happened here." The words came out all at once, as if I were unburdening a weight I had been carrying for a long time. The woman stopped. Her eyes softened, and she seemed to understand the gravity of my situation. "I'll do what I can, but I can't guarantee I'll find what you're looking for," she said, as she started rummaging through one of the boxes. Hope and despair mixed inside me. I needed to know. Time seemed to pass slowly as she searched, but finally, she lifted her head. "I found something." His voice was low, almost a whisper. "There are records of some families that came here at the time, and that may be related to baby exchanges." My heart raced. I needed to know more. "What do you say? Can you tell me?" I asked, anxiety showing in my voice. She pulled out a folder and began flipping through the pages. After a few minutes, she stopped on a specific page. "Here." She pointed to a name. It appears there was a case involving two families who reported their babies missing. The hospital did an investigation, but many records are incomplete. Can you give me more details about these families? I asked, barely able to contain my emotion. She hesitated, looking at the page again. I can help you find this information, but you need to be aware that there may be things you are not prepared to hear. I need to know, I replied, determined. She started taking notes while I watched her, absorbing every word. With each new piece of information, I felt that I was closer to the truth, but also further away from the peaceful life I knew. After our conversation, I left the hospital with mixed feelings. The pressure was building on me. Mark was concerned about my search and wanted me to stop. I knew he meant well, but I couldn't ignore the urgency of my need to discover who I really was. That night, he came home to find me sitting on the couch, leafing through the notes I had made. "Jenna, please, you need to stop this. It's not worth it," he said. His tone was one of concern. "You don't understand, Mark. I can't just ignore it. It's my life. It's who I am." I replied, frustration boiling over. "But what about us? And our life together?" He questioned, his voice shaking. "This is affecting us. I feel like you're moving away from me." "I'm not walking away from you. I'm trying to understand myself," I retorted, tears beginning to slide down my face. "If you can't see that, I don't know how we're going to get through it." Mark sighed, running a hand through his hair. He seemed lost, and that made me even more distressed. "I just want you to be happy, but this search is becoming obsessive, Jenna." His voice was full of emotion. I looked at him, trying to see what was behind his expression. I was right to worry, but I couldn't just give up. The truth was out there, and I was willing to find it, even if it meant entering an unknown world full of secrets. "I can't stop, Mark," she said, decidedly. "I need to know." I never thought that a simple conversation between friends could change my life so much. Sarah was always a constant presence in my childhood, but after we graduated, life took us down different paths. When I reached out to her to open up about the DNA testing and my findings, I had no idea how important she would become in this journey. We met at a cozy cafe in the city center. The aroma of fresh coffee and the whispers of conversation around us created a welcoming atmosphere. Sarah arrived first and, upon seeing me, waved excitedly. His smile was infectious, but as I approached, I noticed there was a shadow of concern in his eyes. "Jenna, how long?" she exclaimed, standing up to give me a tight hug. "You look so different." "I know, right? Life has been a roller coaster," I replied, sitting down at the table. "Actually, I'm going through a very complicated phase." She watched me closely as I told her about the DNA test and the discovery that I was not Mary and Roger's biological daughter. Upon hearing my words, Sarah frowned, an expression that indicated she was absorbing the gravity of the situation. "This is insane, Jenna. Have you thought about how you're going to handle this?" she asked, adjusting herself in her chair, clearly interested. "I have no idea. I'm desperate for answers." I went digging through old records and discovered that I was born at Maplewood General. "And apparently there's a baby swap scandal involving the hospital," I explained, trying to remain calm as I spoke. "And I thought you could help me find out more." Sarah leaned forward, her gaze now full of determination. "My mom worked at Maplewood. She might know something. If you want, I can ask her." My heart raced. This could be the key to understanding everything. "Would you do that?" "I would be forever grateful." "Of course. Let's find out what we can." "I'll talk to her and update you," replied Sarah, her voice brimming with enthusiasm. After finishing our coffee, she said goodbye and promised to call me as soon as she had news. Expectation pulsed in my chest as I walked home, imagining the possible answers that might emerge. But at the same time, anxiety consumed me. Several days passed before Sarah called me. I was in the middle of a work meeting when my cell phone vibrated, and I couldn't help but quickly glance at it. It was a message from her. "We need to meet. I have information." My heart raced in my chest. As soon as I finished the meeting, I got in my car and went straight to the cafe where we used to meet. When I walked in, I spotted Sarah sitting at a table in the corner, her expression a mix of excitement and apprehension. "Hi, what did you find out?" I asked, sitting across from him. So my mom told me about the babies that were switched. It was a huge scandal at the time, but she didn't know all the details. She spoke about some mothers who had struggled to find their children and how this affected families at the hospital. But, Jenna, she mentioned something interesting. About what? I asked, leaning forward, curiosity consuming me. She said there was a mother who always looked for her daughter and never gave up. Her name is Lily. I don't know if it's the same person, but you should try to find her, Sarah said, her eyes shining with excitement. I think this can help you understand everything better. Lily, I'll look for it. Do you have any idea how I can do this? Relief and hope flooded my being. We can search social media and see if we can find any clues. And if I can, I'll talk to my mom again to see if she remembers anything else, Sarah suggested. I would love that. Thank you, Sarah. You have no idea how much this means to me, I declared, feeling a rush of gratitude. In that moment, the connection between us solidified. Sarah wasn't just a childhood friend. She was becoming a true ally in my search for answers. And as we continued to talk, our laughter and stories mixed with the worries that surrounded us, creating a bond stronger than I could have imagined. As the days passed, we dove into intense research. We spent hours on the internet, looking for records and trying to find this Lily. Sarah became a constant source of support, always ready to listen to my concerns and offer suggestions. I felt lost, but at the same time, there was a flame of hope that drove me to continue. One evening, as we were reviewing the information we had gathered, I received a text from Sarah. Jenna, I found something, a Facebook account that could be hers. Her name is Lily Thompson. My heart stopped for a moment. Are you serious? Can you give me the link? She quickly sent the link and, with shaking hands, I clicked to open it. A photo of a woman with a radiant smile appeared on the screen. Lily's jaw dropped slightly, and there was something in her eyes that reminded me of myself. She looks a little like me, doesn't she? I commented to Sarah, who was looking at the screen carefully. Yes, this is incredible. You should try to contact her, Sarah suggested, her eyes shining with excitement. Do you think I should? What if she doesn't want to hear from me? What if this is too much for her? Doubts began to consume me. You won't know the answer until you try. What if she's just as full of questions as you are? It could be that they both need each other, Sarah said firmly. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the decision. You're right. I'll send a message now. With a shaking hand, I wrote a simple message explaining who I was and how I had discovered your existence. After I clicked send, a wave of anxiety hit me. What had I done? What if this was the worst decision of my life? But deep down, there was a part of me that yearned to understand. I needed to know more about where I came from, and maybe, just maybe, this search would take me to a place of understanding and connection that I never imagined was possible. Now to wait, I murmured to Sarah, who smiled encouragingly. And in the meantime, we will continue our investigation. Who knows what else we might discover? And so, together, we continued our search, more determined than ever. The search for the truth about my identity had become an obsession, and with each new discovery, the feeling that I was closer to understanding who I really was grew. The revelation that I had a biological sister named Lily was a mix of hope and fear. How could two people who have never met be so different and, at the same time, so similar? The idea of meeting her made me anxious and excited, but it also made me feel insecure. What would we say to each other? What would our first date be like? I decided that I needed to prepare for this meeting. I went to a clothing store I used to visit with my mom, trying to find something that made me feel confident. I looked in the mirror and hesitated, thinking about what it would be like if Lily were watching me right now. A part of me wanted it to be a perfect date, while the other part was stuck in fear of the unknown. I bought a blue blouse that highlighted my eyes and jeans that made me feel comfortable. On the appointed day, I arrived at the cafe where we decided to meet. The place was full, but I found a table in the corner where I could watch the entrance. My heart was beating fast in my chest, and I couldn't shake the anxiety. What if she didn't like me? What if we had nothing in common? When Lily walked in, my gaze was instantly fixed on her. She was tall like me, with light brown hair that fell in soft waves around her shoulders. His smile was shy, but there was a light in his eyes that made me feel like everything would be okay. I stood up and greeted her with a hesitant hug. "Hi, Jenna. It's so weird being here, isn't it?" she said with a nervous laugh. "Yes, but I'm so glad you came," I replied, trying to hide my own insecurity. We sat down and, for a few minutes, exchanged nervous smiles, not knowing where to start. Finally, Lily broke the silence. "So, what did you find out about our history?" "Well, I heard we were swapped at Maplewood General," I began, feeling the need to be honest. "And I don't know much more than that, except that my parents aren't my biological parents." She nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. "I'm also trying to find out more. My parents never talked much about the past, and when I mentioned the hospital, they changed the subject. I always felt like something was missing, like I didn't completely belong to this family." Those words resonated with me. I felt that way too. Every time I looked at my parents, there was something that didn't fit. Now, it all seems to make a little more sense. "Have you met your biological mother yet?" Lily asked, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. "No, not yet. I'm scared of what I'll find out. What about you?" "Me neither, but I've been thinking about it a lot. I wonder what our mothers went through. How did they feel about losing us?" Lily's expression was one of genuine concern, and I could tell she was just as anxious as I was. The waiter appeared to serve us and, as we sipped our coffees, we talked about our lives. I discovered that Lily had a passion for art and was studying graphic design. She talked about how she always felt different from others and how art was always a form of expression for her. "I love the way art can tell stories," she said, her eyes lighting up. "I think, in a way, we're telling our story now." "Yes, and it's a complicated story," I replied, feeling a stronger connection to her with each word. "But it's also ours. It's about how we deal with this together." After a few hours of conversation, we decided to take a walk in the nearby park. As we walked, Lily told me about her childhood and how she always felt a little out of place. "Why did our mothers choose not to tell us the truth?" she asked, looking up at the sky. "Maybe they thought they were protecting us. Or maybe they were afraid of how we would react," I suggested. "It's hard to imagine what they went through. I just want to understand why this all happened." Lily stopped and looked at me. "What do you hope to find, Jenna? What do you want to know?" "I want to know who I am. I want to understand my origins. And, most importantly, I want to understand why this was kept a secret from us. It's as if we were living a lie." I felt frustration building inside me, and Lily seemed to understand. "I want that too. But at the same time, I'm afraid of finding out that our lives aren't what we thought. What if our mothers didn't care about us?" The pain in his voice was palpable, and I knew we were sharing a vulnerable moment. "I don't think they didn't care," I said, trying to offer some comfort. "I think they loved each other in complicated ways, and that doesn't take away from the love we feel for our families. I want to know my birth mother, but I also want her to know that my love for my real mother is real." Lily smiled, a sad but understanding smile. "I understand. Let's face this together, then. No matter what happens, I'll be here." "Yes, together," I confirmed, feeling relieved to realize that I wasn't alone on this journey. "We can figure this out together." The sun was beginning to set, turning the sky orange and pink. It was a beautiful and symbolic moment, reflecting the new light our friendship was bringing to our lives. As we walked back to the cafe, I felt like I had found not only a sister, but also a friend. A connection that, although it grew out of a troubled past, had the potential to grow into something beautiful and meaningful. That afternoon wouldn't solve all my problems, but it gave me hope. Life was a tangle of secrets and truths, and I was willing to discover everything with Lily by my side. This is how the journey of discovering who we are really begins, through connecting with those who share our story, even if in an unexpected way. The tension was high in the air, like a taut thread about to snap. Since meeting Lily, my biological sister, my world had changed in ways I could barely comprehend. It was as if a new chapter in my life had begun, but with it also came complications I didn't expect to face. The connection I felt with Lily was intense, but there was a growing weight in my heart as I knew it was affecting my relationship with Mark. He was sitting at the kitchen table, his eyes fixed on the newspaper, but his mind seemed to be far away. The atmosphere was tense, as if a storm was brewing. I approached, hesitantly. "Mark, can we talk?" I asked, trying to break the silence. He looked up, and I saw him slowly close the newspaper. "Of course, Jenna. What do you have in mind?" "About Lily. About all of this," I said, gesturing with my hands, trying to find the right words. "I feel like I'm opening a door that's been closed for so long, and I don't know how you feel about that." Mark sighed, his expression changing to a mix of worry and frustration. "I understand, but you can't just ignore what this means to us. We are going through a huge change, and you seem to be pulling away. Like this?" I asked, a little defensively. "I'm trying to understand who I am, and that involves Lily and our biological family." "I know, but this isn't just about you, Jenna." He raised his voice, and the sound echoed through the kitchen. "I'm here too, and I feel like I'm being left out. You spent most of your time with her, and I'm feeling left out." "Deleted? Mark, you know that's not it." I snapped, my voice rising as well. "I didn't choose this. I did not choose to discover that I am not my parents' biological daughter. I'm trying to understand what this means for me and for you." "And what do you expect me to do?" he replied, his gaze fixed on me, a mixture of pain and anger in his eyes. "I want to support you, but it seems like you are so caught up in this new discovery that you forgot about me. What am I to you now, Jenna? Just the husband who stays in the background while you search for answers?" Those words hit me like an arrow. I didn't want him to feel that way. "You are everything to me, Mark. It always was. But I can't ignore what's happening. Lily is. She's a part of me in ways I never would have imagined. I feel a connection with her, and I don't know how to deal with it." He stood up from the table, running a hand through his hair. "What if this connection ends up pushing us further apart? What if you decide you'd rather be with her than me? That's my fear, Jenna. That's not what I want. You are my husband, and I love you," I said, feeling the wetness in my eyes. "But I can't just erase everything I'm discovering about myself. I need this." Mark looked at me, the anger beginning to dissipate, giving way to sadness. "So what do you suggest? How can we make this work? Because honestly, I feel lost. We can try to understand this together. I want you to meet Lily. I want you to see what we're discovering. You can help me deal with this instead of feeling threatened," I proposed, hope beginning to glow within me. He hesitated, looking at the floor. "I don't know, Jenna. This is all very new to me. I feel like I'm losing you. How can I compete with someone who is your sister?" "It's not about competition, Mark. It's about understanding who I am," I said, trying to convey the urgency I felt. "I believe that if you open yourself up to it, you can see that there is nothing that can separate us. I just want you to help me find a balance." He crossed his arms, looking out the window, as if fighting an internal storm. "What if I don't make it? What if this ends up becoming something we can't control? We need to try, at least. We can't let fear control us," I replied, voice shaking. "You are my partner. This is a journey I don't want to take alone." Mark seemed to be evaluating my words, and a heavy silence followed. Finally, he took a deep breath and looked at me. "He is well. I am going to try, but you need to promise that you won't walk away from me. I don't want to be an observer in your life, Jenna." "I promise. You're the person I want by my side, and I'll do whatever it takes to make sure that doesn't change," I said, feeling relieved that he was willing to open up. That night, as we lay in bed, I couldn't help but feel that our relationship was at a turning point. The conversation had been difficult, but I felt like it had somehow strengthened our bonds. However, Lily's presence in my life would not disappear. The connection I felt with her was powerful and real, and I was aware that I would need to find a way to integrate this new part of myself without losing the essence of what I had built with Mark. The next few days were an emotional roller coaster. I found myself torn between the excitement of learning more about my biological family and the need to protect my marriage. And with each encounter I had with Lily, the guilt grew a little more inside me. It was a delicate dance, where each step could lead to an unexpected twist. One morning, while we were having breakfast, Mark broke the silence. "What if the two of us formed a bond with Lily? I'm not saying we should become a family, but maybe we can get to know you better. This could help us understand what is happening. Would you really do that?" I asked, surprised and excited. That would be amazing. I would love for you to feel part of it. Yes, why not? But you need to assure me that this doesn't mean you're going to walk away from me. I want this to be a shared experience, not something that separates us, he replied, his gaze firm but gentle. I promise, Mark. This means a lot to me, I said, feeling a rush of gratitude. We'll meet up with her this weekend and see how things go. We agree to keep open minds and open hearts. But as the date approached, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was yet to come, a new challenge that would test our union in ways we couldn't yet imagine. The room was enveloped in an almost palpable silence. The heavy air felt thick with unspoken emotions, and I could barely contain the anxiety that pulsed inside me. There was a mixture of expectation and fear, a whirlwind of feelings that I didn't know how to describe. Lily and I met in a small conference room at Maplewood Hospital, and our birth mothers, whom we had never met before, were about to enter. Are you ready? Lily asked, her shaky voice revealing the nervousness we shared. I looked at her, a young woman with light brown hair and green eyes, and felt an instant connection. It was like looking into a mirror that reflected a part of me I never knew existed. I don't know. I'm just as nervous as you are, I replied, trying to force a smile, but my expression was far from calm. For a moment, we exchanged a knowing look, as if we knew we were about to enter unknown territory. Then, the door opened, and the two women entered. One of them was a tall woman with black hair and deep-set eyes that seemed to shine with a mixture of sadness and hope. The other, shorter one, had gray hair and a welcoming smile, but her eyes showed an emotional charge that could not be ignored. They were both our biological mothers. Hello, the raven-haired woman said, her voice soft but firm. I'm Amanda, Lily's mother. She looked at us, and I could feel her appraising gaze, as if trying to figure out who we were. And this is my friend, Clara, Jenna's mother. Clara smiled shyly and nodded. Hi, girls, she said, her voice soft, almost like a whisper. We're here to talk. The air was thick with unexpressed emotions, and the silence that followed was almost deafening. I looked at Lily, who seemed as lost in thought as I was. What would we say? What could we say that wasn't painful? What would our mothers feel when they saw us? Why don't we start from the beginning? I suggested, trying to break the tension. Amanda, can you tell us what your story was like? Amanda took a deep breath, as if preparing herself for a difficult journey. Well, I was in a difficult situation when Lily was born. I was very young and couldn't take care of her. I left her at the hospital, and it was the hardest decision of my life. Her eyes filled with tears, and I felt my heart squeeze. I always dreamed of meeting her again, but the system, things were complicated. Lily watched her with an intense gaze, as if she were trying to absorb every word. Did you always know you gave me up for adoption? The question left his lips like a whisper. Yes, Amanda replied, her voice breaking. I always knew. But there wasn't a day that went by that I didn't think about you. I read about cases of baby swapping in the hospital. I knew that many mothers were going through the same pain as me. And you never tried to find me? Lily asked, her voice shaking. I didn't know where to start, Amanda replied, sincerity in her eyes. I was afraid you were okay, and I didn't want to risk your happiness. And besides, I had other obligations in my life. But please believe me, I have always loved you. The atmosphere was filled with pain, and I felt like Amanda's every word was being absorbed by us, as if we were trying to piece together an unfinished story. I looked at Clara, who looked just as affected as we were. Clara, can you tell us about what it was like for you? Lily asked, looking at the woman who had given us life, but who was never there. Clara took a deep breath, and her expression became melancholic. It was a difficult time for me too. When Jenna was born, I had no money and was in a troubled relationship. I was unable to care for her, and the decision to put her up for adoption was devastating. I always knew it was best for her, but my heart was always broken. I also dreamed of finding her. And you never tried to look for me? I asked, voice shaking. I looked, Clara confessed, tears streaming down her face. But there was no effective system. Life was hard, and eventually, I moved on. But always, I loved her. I always wanted to know how you were. Silence settled again as I tried to process everything that was being said. It was like the ground beneath me was moving, and I was trying to find balance. I was torn between the pain of the past and the hope for a future. How did you feel when you found out we existed? Lily asked, breaking the silence. A mix of emotions, Amanda replied. I was relieved to know that you were alive, but at the same time, my heart was filled with sadness. I wasted so much time. I wish I could have been part of your life. And I was scared, Clara added, the words coming out as a whisper. Afraid that you wouldn't want to know me. Afraid that you would have a happy life and not need me. Together, the four of us found ourselves in a space of pain and love, a space that was new and unfamiliar. It was as if the line between past and present was blurring, and we were all part of something bigger. I feel like we have so much to discover about each other, I said, trying to see a positive side to all the pain. Maybe we can support each other now that we know the truth. Yes, I would like that, Lily agreed, her gaze wide and hopeful. And at that moment, I realized that, despite the pain and suffering, there was a light at the end of the tunnel. An opportunity to build new bonds, to create new memories. I looked at Clara and Amanda, who shared a look of mutual understanding. The pain they felt was real, but there was also a desire for reconnection, a desire to rebuild what was lost. Let's take it one step at a time, Amanda said, her voice firm. We're here now, and that's what matters. And so, in that small space, we began to weave new stories, intertwining our lives in ways we could never have imagined. The truth was still embedded in our hearts, but now there was also love and hope. And as we talked, I knew that no matter what happened next, these newfound connections would make us stronger. After meeting our biological mothers, the intensity of emotions still echoed within me. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring into space, as the echoes of voices and shared stories intertwined in my mind. The revelation, while liberating, was also oppressive. How could I be the same Jenna I knew before I discovered I wasn't Mary and Roger's biological daughter? With each memory I rescued, each laugh and each tear, I found myself in a maze of uncertainty and questions. Jenna? Mark's voice came from far away, breaking the silence that enveloped me like a heavy cloak. He appeared in the bedroom doorway, his face reflecting concern. Are you well? I took a deep breath, trying to organize my thoughts before responding. I'm trying to process all of this, Mark. It was intense. My voice was shaking, and I knew I couldn't hide the confusion that reigned in my heart. Mark came over, sitting on the bed next to me. He took my hand, but the feeling of comfort I used to find in that gesture was now mixed with a growing insecurity. If you need someone to talk to, I'm here. I don't want you to go through this alone. It's just, I don't know where to start. My voice cracked again. I always thought my life was simple. Now everything I've ever known seems to have shattered into fragments. I don't know who I am, and that's terrifying. He frowned, as if trying to understand the depth of my despair. You're still the same Jenna. Your parents love you. No matter what the DNA test says, you are their daughter. It doesn't change how you feel about them and they about you. But change, Mark. Change everything. How can I look at them the same way after knowing that I am a stranger to them? I stood up, starting to pace the room, nervous energy pulsing through my body. What about Lily? I've only known her for a few weeks, but I feel a connection to her that I can't explain. And now I am torn between two families, two truths. Mark stood up and followed me, placing a hand gently on my shoulder. Try not to think that you have to choose. You can have room in your life for both truths. You don't need to move away from your adoptive parents to discover more about your biological roots. But what if I discover that the truth is not what I expected? I looked at him, desperation reflected in my eyes. What if Lily and I aren't really like two halves of a whole? What if this all ends badly? Then you will deal with it when the time comes. For now, you need to allow yourself to feel. This is an important moment in your life, Jenna. Don't be afraid to be vulnerable. I'm here, and I'll support you no matter what. I took a deep breath, trying to find comfort in his words, but the inner turmoil wouldn't dissipate. Mark, I appreciate your support, but you can't understand what I'm going through. Nobody can. I'm lost between who I am and who I thought I was. I pulled away from him a little, feeling the need for space to process the turmoil inside me. I want to understand, but you need to let me in. I can't help you if you don't share how you really feel, he said, frustration starting to seep into his voice. You're closing yourself off from me. I'm not closing myself off. I'm trying to find out who I am. It's all so new and scary. I looked at him, and the pain in my expression seemed to break the barrier between us a little. I was always the perfect daughter, the perfect wife, and now all of that is falling apart. You don't have to be perfect. You are human, and it's normal to feel this way when faced with such a big change, Mark said, his voice softer now. Why don't you try talking about this with Lily? Maybe she's feeling the same way. Perhaps. But what if I find out she doesn't care that much? What if I'm the only one who's so deeply affected by this? I looked up from the floor and looked at Mark, vulnerability in my eyes. I don't want to be the only one who gets hurt. What if I open my heart and she doesn't feel the same? So you're going to have to take that risk. If you don't try, you'll never know. Life is full of uncertainty, Jenna. The only thing you can control is how you react to them. He paused, as if thinking about his words. If you don't try to connect with her, you're missing out on discovering something incredible. And I will be by your side no matter what. Mark's words began to sink into my heart, and I realized that perhaps there was truth in them. I was so busy with the fear of losing everything that I didn't realize that I could actually gain so much more. What if I can't handle it? What if this ends our marriage? Jenna, your heart is big enough to love more than one person. You are not betraying your adoptive parents. You're just seeking the truth about who you are, and that doesn't take away from the love you already have for them. He looked into my eyes, and I saw the sincerity in his gaze. I want you to be happy, and if that means exploring your biological roots, then I'm with you. The tension that surrounded me began to dissipate, and the idea of accepting this new part of myself began to seem less scary. Do you really think I can do this? Yes, I believe you, and I will be by your side, always. He smiled, and for the first time in days, I felt a thread of hope intertwine with the pain. I decided it was time to take a step forward, to seek the answers I so desperately wanted, even if it meant facing my fears. The journey was just beginning, and maybe, just maybe, I could discover not only who I was, but also strengthen the bonds that already existed in my life. The conversation with Sarah was a ray of light amidst the storm of uncertainty that was sweeping over me. Sitting in a cozy cafe, the aroma of fresh coffee and the gentle murmur of conversation around us seemed almost a contrast to the turbulence unfolding in my mind. I looked at Sarah, who was closely watching my expression, and realized she could feel my inner turmoil. Jenna, you can't let this consume you, she said, her voice soft but firm. You need to find out the truth, no matter how scary it is. This is about you, about your life and who you really are. I sighed, feeling the weight of her words. But what if the truth is more painful than I imagine? What if I find out I don't belong anywhere? Insecurity pulsed in my chest like a drum. I always felt part of my family, and now, all of that is changing. Sarah tilted her head thoughtfully. The truth can hurt, yes, but living a lie is even worse. You can't spend your whole life wondering who you really are. You need to face this, Jenna, and I will be by your side no matter what. The determination in her eyes gave me some courage. You're right, I murmured, feeling the power of her words resonate with me. I need to find myself, even if it means facing the unknown. And Lily, I feel like she can help me understand all of this. And you can help her too, Sarah replied, smiling. This connection you have is something that cannot be ignored. If you decide to move forward, do it together. You need each other. The clock on the wall kept time, but it seemed like not a second had passed since we started talking. The world around us disappeared, and all that mattered was what I had inside me. So, do you think I should meet Lily again? I asked, with a mix of expectation and fear. Yes, you have so much to discover, and if you need support, you can always count on me, Sarah said, her voice warmed by genuine affection. Let's find out the truth together. Okay, let's do this. The answer came out firmer than I expected. The impulse to seek this lost connection, even in the midst of chaos, was growing within me. Let's schedule something. I want her to know I'm ready to talk about this. In the days that followed, the idea of finding Lily became a mantra. With each passing moment, my anxiety was mixed with a growing hope. I wasn't alone, and that made all the difference. Finally, one day, with my heart racing, I sent Lily a message. "Hi Lily, this is Jenna. I would really like to meet again. There's a lot to discuss, and I feel like we need to support each other in this process. What do you think?" The answer didn't take long to arrive. "Hi, Jenna. I would love. Let's meet. How about Saturday afternoon? We can go to that park where we used to play when we were kids." Our meeting was scheduled, but the anxiety was palpable. That Saturday morning, I dressed carefully, choosing a blouse that made me feel confident. At the same time, nervousness made me question my choices. What would I say to her? What would our reunion be like? I arrived at the park before Lily and sat on a bench, watching the children playing and the families gathering. The leaves of the trees gently danced in the wind, and a feeling of nostalgia came over me. I remembered the afternoons spent there, laughing and running with friends, not knowing that fate had separated us in such drastic ways. When Lily finally arrived, I recognized her immediately. She looked so different and yet so familiar. The same smile I remembered, but now there was an intensity in his eyes. She approached with a hesitant look, and I stood up to hug her. "Hi, Jenna. It's so good to see you again," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "Hi, Lily. I'm happy to see you too," I replied, trying to hide my nervousness. "How are you?" "I'm fine, I guess. It's been a roller coaster since I found out about all this," she admitted, sitting down next to me. "And you?" I'm trying to deal with this. It's difficult, you know?" I sighed, looking at the floor. "But I'm here, and I want to understand more about us." "Me too," Lily said, her voice now firmer. "I always felt like something was missing in my life. And now, knowing that we have this connection, it's like everything is starting to make sense." The conversation flowed naturally, as if no time had passed. We shared stories about our childhoods, the pain and joy we experienced, and little by little, the barriers that separated us began to dissolve. "Do you remember that time we went to the amusement park and almost missed the bus back?" I asked, and she laughed, her eyes shining with the memory. "Of course I remember. We ran like crazy, and when we got home, our mothers were furious," she replied, still laughing. "But it was the best afternoon of my life." Laughter brought us together, and for a brief moment, worries about our identity and past seemed distant. But soon, the seriousness of the situation enveloped us again. "Lily, have you started thinking about what we're going to do now? How are we going to deal with all this?" I asked, curious about his thoughts. She hesitated for a moment. "The truth is that I want to know more, but I'm also afraid. Fear of what we might discover and how it will affect our lives. And honestly, I don't know how our families are going to react to this." "I have this fear too," I confessed, "but I feel like we need to support each other. I don't want to go through this alone, and I don't think you want to either." She nodded, looking more relieved. "You're right. Let's face this together. We are sisters, even if we didn't grow up together. That means we should support each other, right?" "Okay," I agreed, my heart pounding at the thought that I was finally meeting someone who could understand the confusion and pain I felt. "Let's do this. Let's discover the truth about our lives, about our mothers, and about ourselves." So, that day, under the soft light of the sun, we sealed a pact of brotherhood. We may not have shared the same blood, but the connection we were forming was true and undeniable. And somehow, this fragile hope began to warm the cold that had settled in my heart since the revelation of the DNA test. I was determined to move forward, with Lily by my side, facing the unknown together. The air was charged with tension and expectation as we gathered again, all of us, for what promised to be a decisive meeting. The place we chose was a small conference room in a hotel near Maplewood General, where the stories of our lives began to intertwine in ways we could never have imagined. The walls were a neutral tone, but the atmosphere was vibrant, pulsing with unspoken emotions and secrets about to be revealed. I went in first, my heart pounding, and soon joined Lily, who was already sitting, looking out the window. The sun's reflection on his face illuminated features that were strangely familiar to me. When our eyes met, a cautious smile appeared on his lips. "Are you ready for this?" she asked, her voice soft and shaky. "I don't know if ready is the right word," I replied, sitting down next to him. "But we can't go back now." The door opened and, one by one, our mothers entered. With each word, the barriers that separated us seemed to crumble a little more, and the connection that was forming was palpable. But the truth is that the journey was just beginning. We knew there was still a lot to discover, a lot to heal. The path ahead would not be easy, but it was clear that together we were stronger. The love that existed between us, even if it wasn't based solely on blood ties, was a powerful bond, and we were willing to explore it. As we said our goodbyes, the feeling of uncertainty was replaced by a new determination. We didn't know what the future held for us, but we were ready to face it together. The room was filled with tension and expectation, a reflection of what each of us was feeling. The final meeting, which seemed like a distant dream, was now a tangible reality. I looked around and saw the faces of Lily, my biological sister, and our mothers, Mary and Margaret, full of suppressed emotions. Mark was a silent presence beside me, his gaze anxious and worried, but with a hint of determination. It was time to confront what we had learned and how it would change our lives forever. "I never thought we would get to this point," I murmured, breaking the awkward silence. "We're here, all of us, and it feels surreal." "Yes, but we need to be honest with each other," Lily replied, her voice shaky but firm. "The truths we are about to share may be painful, but they are necessary." Our mothers looked at each other, a silent understanding passing between them. Finally, Margaret, Lily's biological mother, took the floor. "I know this situation is complicated. What happened at Maplewood General isn't just a matter of baby swapping. It's a labyrinth of pain and love, and we need to unravel it together." Mary nodded, her expression filled with remorse. "You need to know the truth about what happened." I knew about the exchange from the beginning. Over the years, I've struggled with this truth, and the love I feel for you, Jenna, has kept me from telling it. I just wanted to protect you and the life we built together. A heavy silence fell over the room. I felt my heart race. "Did you know? You knew and never said anything?" Indignation mixed with confusion inside me. "Why didn't you tell me? Why did you let me live this lie?" "I didn't know how you would react," Mary replied, her hands shaking. "I loved you so much, and what I did was out of love. I was afraid the truth would hurt you. I wanted you to have a normal life, full of love and happiness. I didn't want you to carry that weight, but I had the right to know." I retorted, pain and betrayal overflowing in my voice. "How could you deprive me of this? How could you live with that secret?" Margaret then intervened, her voice soft but firm. "Jenna, I understand your pain. What happened was a tragedy that affected many lives. I also bear my share of the blame. I never looked for you, and that is something I will always regret. The pain we feel cannot be measured, but I wish we can find a path to healing. What if I can never forgive?" The question escaped my lips before I could think. What was I asking for? A forgiveness that seemed so far away? Lily, who had been silent, took my hand. "I also feel betrayed, but we cannot allow this to divide us. We're in this together now. We are sisters, and that cannot be erased. We have to find a way to move forward." The tension began to slowly dissipate, like mist dispersing in sunlight. I looked at Mark, who had remained quiet but was now holding my hand firmly, offering support. "I'm here for you, Jenna. Regardless of what you decide, I will be by your side." "Thank you," I murmured, the words coming out as a whisper. "I don't know what to do with all this. My life was built on lies. I don't know if I can handle all of this." "It's normal to feel this way," said Margaret, with a look of compassion. "And that's why we're here. To share truths, no matter how painful, and to find a path together. We need to find a way to rebuild this relationship," Lily said, her gaze steady. Mary, my adoptive mother, went in first. She looked as nervous as I felt, and her eyes were red, as if she had been crying before arriving. Right behind her, Lily's mother, a woman I had never seen before, walked with an upright posture, but her eyes betrayed the vulnerability she was trying to hide. The atmosphere grew thick, and the room seemed to shrink as each of us settled in, as if the weight of everything we were about to discuss was pressing down on the bricks around us. "Thank you all for being here," I began, voice cracking a little. "This is an important moment for us." "Yes," Mary agreed, her hand shaking as she touched the table. "We need to be honest with each other." Lily's mother nodded, but didn't say anything right away. The silence stretched, filled with a mixture of expectation and fear. We knew we were about to unearth wounds from the past, and the idea made us apprehensive. "I wanted to know how you felt after our last meeting," Lily said, breaking the silence. "I think we need to understand what each of us is thinking." "For me," Mary began, "it was a shock. I always knew that my life was intertwined with yours, but I never imagined that I would have to face it head-on. It was painful, but at the same time, I feel like I can finally tell the truth." "It's what I want most," I replied, my voice firm. "The truth. What really happened, and why didn't you tell us sooner?" Lily's mother looked hesitant, but finally spoke. "Back then, everything was very different. The hospital was involved in a scandal that no one wanted to come to light. I didn't want Lily to know, and I didn't want you to know, Jenna. I thought I was protecting you." "But protect from what?" I asked, feeling frustration starting to mix with sadness. "Whose am I really? This is something I should have known from the beginning." "I never wanted you to feel less loved," Mary interjected, her eyes shining with tears. "I love you, Jenna. I always loved it. The truth is, I was afraid you would walk away from me if you knew. The love we have is not based on blood ties, but I was afraid you wouldn't see that." "But I needed to know," I said, emotion rising in my throat. "And now, after everything, how can I trust you?" "I understand," said Lily's mother, her voice now firmer. "I also carry the blame. I lost years of my daughter's life because of secrets, but now we have an opportunity to rebuild that. We can start from scratch if you want." Lily looked at me, and I saw a mixture of understanding and pain in her eyes. "What if we don't want to? What if we decide we can't move forward with this?" "Then, I will respect your decision," Lily's mother replied, her voice full of sincerity. "But I hope we can find a way, not just for us, but for you too. I know that life can be more complicated and painful than we imagine, but love is what brings us together. What if this love isn't enough?" I asked myself, insecurity mirroring my voice. "We need to take it one step at a time," Lily suggested, her hand coming close to mine. "Let's get to know each other again. Let's give ourselves a chance to discover who we are to each other. We don't need to rush anything." A heavy silence fell upon us again, but there was something new in the air. It was the feeling that we were beginning to build a bridge, even if fragile, between our stories. What seemed impossible was starting to become a possibility. "I want to try," I declared, looking each of them in the eye. "I want to understand you and, more importantly, I want you to understand me." Mary smiled, a look of relief evident on her face. "And I want you to know that even though I have failed to share the truth in the past, my love for you has never diminished." "Let's take a step forward and see where this takes us," Lily's mother suggested, and I felt like that might be the key to what came next. So, with a new air of hope, we started talking. We share stories about our lives, our loves, our losses, and our achievements. And that starts with honesty. We have to allow ourselves to feel the pain, but also the joy of finding ourselves. Lily's words resonated with me. The pain he felt could not be ignored, but hope for a better future was beginning to form. "So what do we do now?" I asked, my voice still shaking but with a hint of determination. "We can start sharing our stories," suggested Mary. "Talk about what happened, how we felt, and what we hope for the future. It can help us understand and connect in a deeper way." I looked at each of them, realizing that despite the pain, there was an opportunity to rebuild something new. "I want to know more about you, Mary. What was your life like when you found out I was your biological daughter? How did you handle it?" Mary took a deep breath and began to speak. "It was devastating. I was only 20 years old and alone. When I found out that my daughter had been switched at the hospital, my world collapsed. I didn't know how to tell the truth to anyone, least of all you. I had to move on, but I always hoped that one day you would know." The love I feel for you has never diminished, even with the distance." As Mary spoke, tears began to stream down my face. I could see the depth of his love, even though his actions caused pain. I looked at Lily, who was also crying, and our eyes met in silent understanding. The pain we shared was just one part of our story, and now we had the chance to write a new chapter. "I want us to build a new relationship, one based on truth and love," said Lily, her voice breaking. "We are in this together now. Let's support each other." The environment around us began to transform. The tension was replaced by a sense of hope. Although the journey ahead was long and full of challenges, we knew we didn't have to face it alone. Mary and Margaret exchanged knowing glances, a sign that they were willing to face the past and the future together. "We're here for you," Margaret said, her voice full of determination. "We will work to build something new. It will be difficult, but I am confident we can find a way." "Then let's do this," I declared, feeling a new kind of strength rising within me. "We will rebuild not just what we lost, but also what we can gain." Mark smiled at me, his gaze full of pride. "I'm with you no matter what. Let's face this together." So, at that moment, we realized that blood ties, no matter how strong they are, do not define the depth of love. What really matters are the choices we make and how we choose to love each other. And there, in that room, we created a new bond that, although born of pain, was blossoming in hope and love.